So my name is Kim Holtzclaw, and I'm a foster adopt mom as well. And my husband and I, we were part of one of the larger churches in Burnett. And at that time, there wasn't any ministry when we were adopting and considering foster care. There wasn't a ministry, and there were, I think, a couple of people at our church who had adopted internationally. And somehow someone developed a passion for wanting to do something in foster care. I don't know if they were fostering themselves or if they just saw the desperate need, because there aren't foster homes in Burnett, Texas. So if you're a foster kid in Burnett, Texas, you're now placed in Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Fort Worth. You're way away from the one friend you had, the neighbor you had that fed you every day, your grandma and your best friend. You're away from everyone, and you went from a tiny, tiny school to a really enormous school overnight with just your backpack. So it's a big hole, when those kids get removed from these little communities, and Llano's even worse. So, you have all these little areas out there. So where I think Fostering Hope, two ways actually that it's kind of made an impact on me. When we were in that mode, we decided, that's kind of always been my passion, was to help in that area. I never knew I'd be an adoptive mom. I just thought I'd always, adopt one day or something like that. But it turned out that the ministry started going, and I came alongside a group who had just gotten licensed to do foster care. And there was no Fostering Hope to come in beside them and tell the church how to support them. So instead, the people who were fostering, in the midst of the trenches of doing that, were trying to have a ministry for themselves, if that makes any sense. So we provided the parenting, the parents' night out, and we would try to do freezer meals, and we would try to get babysitters. We even sent a group of babysitters over here. I was kind of always watching Fostering Hope as they were growing and going, wow, we really need to have that, but have it here. And it just wasn't happening. And we were just this very small army. And although there were some supportive people on the staff at the church, we weren't really allowed to say much, if that makes sense, other than have a table on Orphan Sunday. And so that wasn't enough to get the support we needed from that area. So we would get agencies to come in and license groups of people, and they would all start their fostering, and then they would get their one kid, they'd adopt the kid, and then those parents were done, and then they needed support in a different way, because now they're adoptive parents who needs ongoing support, and then we were still having people interested in becoming foster parents. So the ministry was growing, but we had no way to know what to do. So they kept sending us to conferences, like the CAFO conference. They'd spend $2,000, $3,000 sending a couple of us way to Chicago or somewhere else to learn about foster care ministry, where you're bombarded with 5,000 booths, all of which, you mentioned like a franchising model of that. A lot of them had that. But we didn't have, once again, the resources to say, oh, well, yeah, come and plant your thing in our church and help us run it. It just didn't work that way. So we would get little bits and pieces. We'd come back with way too much information, way too excited to start 100 different things, and none of it ever worked. So anyway, we crashed and burned about 10 years in when the pandemic hit, because we hadn't built anything that could stick. And so that's where Fostering Hope would have been an enormous help, even way out there for us. And so now, fast forward a little bit, working with the Highland Lakes, they called me because they knew I had done that ministry in the area for a long time. And there have been really awesome people like Travis who would come in and we want to help. How can we help? And we're like, we don't even know how you can help. But they reached out to me because I was a connector. I kind of knew who was doing what in the area, what was being done, what wasn't being done. And I could easily tell them, that's probably not going to work here. Or do you realize this is an ongoing thing? You can't just say, let's all make bunk beds one weekend and then it's done. It's going to take some ongoing stuff. And that's about the time they invited Julie in also and she was, very clear. And I think made them see, painted the picture of what it really takes to get churches involved in a way that they can highlight what each church does well and then meet the needs. So there's a group of people to serve, this foster families and foster kids and foster parents and also adoptive parents and also the kinship families that are raising these kids who may not have even been put in foster care. Maybe they just went to grandma before they were removed, and therefore they don't get any services. They don't get trained on trauma. They don't get free counseling. They don't get anything. They don't get a dime from any, place, and yet they're still there raising the same kind of kid that's in a foster home, but with no resources. And so, being able to have each church say, you know what, we're an older generation church, but we make freezer meals like crazy. Like we can fill up a freezer. And, the other church have the facilities with the cool playground and lots of young people willing to work, and they can do the parents' night out. But having each church in a small community play a role and supporting the same group instead of every church having a foster care ministry and pulling the group into segments and saying, well, because then they're not connected in the middle in a community. So I love that about Fostering Hope, that they connect the whole community of churches and people to support the one group, the main group that we're trying to support. And I just totally love that. So that's.